Hi, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I'm gonna apologize ahead of time that you are probably not getting me at my best. I'm a survivor, and watching what has happened to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford has been a lot and very hard for me today, and I'm sure for many of you. So that said, if you need some moments to yourself, I would be happy for you to take this time instead of listening to me to find a quiet place and recenter. I won't be offended. I see you and I support you, and you're not alone. Okay. My name is Erica Joy Baker, as Alex just said. Some of you may know me online as Erica Joy, but I can assure you my last name is Baker, not Joy. I have worked in tech for nearly 2 decades. Hang on, that's not working properly, sorry. So I've worked in tech for nearly 2 decades, beginning as a Windows system administrator at the University of Alaska, and winding my way through Home Depot and Google and Slack to land at Patreon, where I'm currently an engineering manager. My first programming language was BASIC. My most recent is Python, though I hope to learn Go real soon now, once I have some free time. I grew up taking things apart and putting them back together again. I was the person who set the clock on the VCR at my house. I was the person to install the CD-ROM drive in my computer and upgrade our computer to a shocking 1 gigabyte hard drive. What were we gonna do with all that space? I was the one who knew what jumper settings to use, and I knew how to tell DOS to do the right thing when Windows booted. I spent much time trolling on DOLNet and FNet. Shout out to people who know IRC. And I was one of the first people to use that newfangled World Wide Web thing when Netscape Navigator came out. I had a GeoCities page, and an Angel Fire page, and a tripod page. And I was on a social network that existed well before Facebook or MySpace. And on that network, I taught thousands of people how to use HTML in the glory days of pseudonymous web usage. I'm not gonna tell you what my handle was, because then you'd go look it up and that'd be weird. I prefer VI over Emacs, though my first text editor was Notepad. All the Emacs people are scowling at me right now. I have no database preferences really, but if I don't say don't use Mongo, my friend Kyle will probably yell at me. So there, don't use Mongo. I've said it, Kyle, don't hurt me. I used to be really excited about React because I was super excited about geospatial querying and how it could apply to my passion of genealogy research and solving the world's family trees. Fun fact, that is what I actually love in this world. Tech just allows me to do that. I like finding edge and corner case bugs and figuring out how to fix them. My favorite shell is Zish. And I'm sharing all that because most of you know me as that lady who talks about diversity and inclusion all the time and won't shut up about it. It's a subject I'm really passionate about. But maybe most of you don't know that I'm a dyed-in-the-wool, spent my lunch hour reading books at my locker, specifically the rainbow books. Anybody know what those are? Any freakers in the audience? Only 3, wow. History, y'all. But yeah, spent my lunch hours reading rainbow books at my locker in high school. I just don't talk about it much. I think there are a lot more interesting things to talk about besides my nerdery. But there, I've said it. It is on the record. I spent a lot of time talking about diversity and inclusion and not technical stuff because there are a lot of people in this world, many of you in this room, who can talk about technical stuff. And I'll let you do it, and I will talk about the diversity and inclusion stuff. Because there are fewer people doing that, and that's super important, especially right now in the world. I'm passionate about talking about that specifically and largely because the idea that an entire industry should belong to 1 or 2 types of people who then get to be the gatekeepers for that industry is preposterous and ridiculous on its face. There are a slew of other reasons I'm passionate about diversity and inclusion, and normally that's what I'd be on stage talking about today. But I'm gonna talk about something different. Today I want to talk about changing the world. So I'm going to start by reading you some actual quotes that I got from the actual internet. Innovative data solutions companies on pace to change the world. The Economist, autonomous vehicles will change the world. Google for Entrepreneurs creates campuses, physical hubs where entrepreneurs can learn, connect, and build companies that will change the world. OtterBox grows to give back, inspiring kids to change the world through entrepreneurship and philanthropy. Microsoft was founded on the belief that software can change the world, and Random Acts of Kindness is a shining example of how we can all come together to make a difference. Google's Made with Code is proud to partner with Tech Innovation Challenge to inspire young women to change the world. As the creator of the first ever on-demand service for designated drivers, CEO Evan Stafford is on an ambitious mission to change the world. Mixpanel, the leader in mobile analytics, has announced that their second data-driven conference has sold out. For those interested in learning how technology's best and brightest are using data to change the world, Mixpanel will host a live stream. Import.io enables customers to tap into the power of data to change the world. DFJ is a venture capital firm that partners with extraordinary entrepreneurs who set out to change the world. Slang is universal and could be the driving factor that brings us together and one day, possibly, change the world, said Edwin Benton, CEO and founder of Slang & Friends. It seems like everyone wants to change the world, from big tech companies to little startups. How many of you have worked at a startup in your entire career? Like, lots of you. How many of you have heard at one point while working in the startup some version of, "We want to change the world"? Yeah, it's pretty common. If you haven't heard it before, odds are you're going to hear it at some point in your working life. And friends, fellow computing comrades, I am so pleased to announce to you today that we did it. We changed the world. We created the tools of modern revolutions. We've helped give platforms to folks who didn't have them previously. We changed how many people travel from point A to point B. We changed where people stay on vacation. We changed how they communicate, how they date, how they eat, how they create, how they get news, how they play games, how they do laundry, how they exercise, how they buy furniture, how they design with that furniture, how they find housing, how they get paid, how they get medical care, how they do pretty much everything. Mission accomplished, in the words of George Bush. We changed the world. And now, we're gonna have to do it again. Because you see, we neglected to do one major important thing. We did not finish the statement. We did not say how we want to change the world. We did not say in what ways we wanted to change the world. We just said we wanted to change the world. The result was that we ended up changing the world in ways we didn't think about. We ended up changing the world in ways we didn't expect. In building a better search engine, we built an ad targeting mega machine, setting that up as the norm for generating website revenue. To build better ad targeting, we began sucking up every little bit of information we could get about people, whether they wanted us to or not. In trying to connect everyone, we built tools of mass harassment. In trying to better reach out to people we might like to hire, we built a legitimized doxing machine. Every one of you who's ever gotten one of those emails from a recruiter that you're like, how in the world did you get my email address? Doxing, just, for profit. A better way to share pictures came with increased focus on curating the best versions of oneself, with everyone else trying to live up to those unrealistic images. Better phones and access to the internet resulted in greater disconnection and loneliness. In trying to build better social networks to rebuild those feelings of connection and belonging we lost, we built great propaganda machines that are easily manipulable by major nation states to effectively influence an election such that the most qualified person we've ever had run for president lost to a charlatan not worth his weight in feathers. Sorry, not sorry. We got so focused on disruption that we didn't stop to think about who or what we were disrupting. So we need to start over and finish the statement. We want to change the world for the better, for everybody. And that, friends, is where things get a little more complicated. So let's do a little history. In the beginning, there were nerds. Well, in the beginning, there was the government, really, and Bell Labs in the government, IBM a little bit, kind of. But let's not go that far back. Let's go back to, say, 1958 and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958. That act was passed, and it allowed the US Small Business Administration to license small business investment companies to help the financing and management of the small entrepreneurial businesses in the United States. Go us. In short, the act is how we got venture capitalists. In the early days, VC firms were making their money on electronic medical and data processing tech, which is, with the first venture-backed startup being Fairchild Semiconductor. Hands if you know who that is. Yeah, y'all know your history. Silicon Valley was arguably founded by the people who founded Fairchild Semiconductor, who you can thank for Moore's Law, Intel, and your favorite VC, Kleiner Perkins. So you could say that Silicon Valley was created with venture capital money. Venture capital money continued to finance Silicon Valley tech, being fueled by private equity funds and limited partnerships, though the amounts of money were tiny in comparison to what we see today. That changed in 1978 when corporate pension funds were permitted to invest in privately held companies, which allowed the VC industry to raise roughly $3 billion in today's dollars. It was $750 million back then. VC was flush with cash, and they used it to bring us DEC, Apple, and Genentech. The success of the small number of early VC firms resulted in everyone trying to get in on the action, and by the end of the 1980s, there were 650 VC firms, actually. And that's in comparison to the few dozen that began in the early 80s. If you haven't seen the TV show *Halt and Catch Fire*, I highly recommend it. It's a great look at this time period, and it's a great show starring Mackenzie Davis, who is amazing, but I digress. At the end of the 80s, VC returns were low, no small thanks to the market tanking in 1987. This caused a number of VC firms to shrink again, and in the early 90s, with the surviving firms strengthening their portfolio companies, Bill Clinton became president. The market recovered, and money was flowing again. Yay, Democrats. Which brought us the VC boom of the mid to late 90s. And while VC was booming, so was tech. Talking fast, because this is a lot. In 1972, the company Trafo Data was born to track and analyze traffic data. A couple of the founders of Trafo Data used the information they learned working on that to found Microsoft. Microsoft took relatively little funding in comparison to others. And around this time, Mosaic brought us Netscape Navigator, which was founded, amongst other, by Mark Andreessen, and we got the World Wide Web. Netscape brought us JavaScript. 10 days. In 1995. And also brought us Brennan Eich, who went on to found the Brave browser and also fund Prop 8, but I digress again. The 90s brought us all manner of tech, much of it backed by VC. Who remembers Pets.com? Yeah. And then it all fell down. The NASDAQ crashed in 2000, the ripples hit the VC industry, companies couldn't IPO anymore, valuations plummeted, and many funds were underwater, and the VC industry halved. And how many of you were here for the first .com crash? Solidarity. It was brutal. It was brutal for us, and it was brutal for the VCs. Those who were around during that crash never want to feel that pain again, and the VCs who are around don't want to feel the pain of watching their massively overvalued investments lose all their value seemingly overnight. They want companies of today to make money. I tell you all this to underscore the point that Silicon Valley is venture capital. Have y'all ever heard the story of the scorpion and the frog? If you haven't, it goes a little something like this. A scorpion asks the frog to take it across the river. The frog balks. Nope, not gonna do it, you're gonna sting me. The scorpion is offended. How dare you? I would never. And after much convincing, the frog agrees to take the scorpion across the river. Halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog. As the frog is dying, he says to the scorpion, "How could you? You said you wouldn't sting me." To which a scorpion replied, "What did you expect? I'm a scorpion, it's what I do." Venture capital is represented on the boards of nearly every tech company that has taken VC funding. So while the founders of every tech company that has taken that funding might have idealistic notions of changing the world, the people they answer to have one goal: make money. And if they're lucky, spawn more companies that they can invest in to make more money. The VCs are the scorpions from the story of the scorpion and the frog, in case that wasn't clear. If they say, "We want to help you change the world," there is a silent, "as long as you're making us money," that goes along with it. And if you aren't making them money, well, they'll sting you to the tune of ousting you from your company and replacing you with someone who will make them money and worry less about changing the world. They'll go ahead and slap some ads on it, sell some customer data, make some deals with the lowest of the low, as long as it's making money. Okay, that was a lot. There is hope, I promise. We, the makers, the builders, the creators, the designers, the developers, the researchers, the aspirers, and the strivers can really change the world, starting right at home. I'll give you the formula. You just have to do it. Step 1, have an idea. Make sure the idea you have does not violate any agreements you have with your employer, should you have one. Step 2, work on your idea on your own personal computer that is in no way attached to your current employer, should you have one. Grow your idea slowly. The obsession with hypergrowth, with scaling up a company rapidly, getting as many customers as fast as possible, comes from where? The VCs. We don't need that. Get customers. Get some paying customers. Get some more of them. Keep going. Build what you want to build on your own terms. That's how you do it. It's pretty basic. And yeah, I know, it's really basic, but I feel like we could all use that reminder from time to time, that we don't have to sacrifice our ideals and our beliefs to change the world. We can build companies that are sustainable, that grow without the VC funding, that make us obsessed with growth, hypergrowth. We can make choices that are in the best interest of our customers and that don't sacrifice our values on the altar of growth, that don't sell out what we know is right for the almighty dollar or your chosen currency. Take Mailchimp. I think Mailchimp is a sponsor, so yay. From the ashes of the dot-com bust, Mailchimp was born in 2001. Now, 17 years later, they're bringing in over $500 million in revenue with no VC funding, which is almost unheard of, but just goes to show you that it's possible. They grew slowly and sustainably and are now able to employ nearly 1,000 people across 3 cities. They did not try to get rich quick, which is one of the many lies that VCs try to get you to believe about working in tech, by the way. And sure, some folks will get comfortable faster than their peers, and get richer quicker, but that's only a small percentage of folks in the industry. If we think of our work in tech as careers instead of gold rushes, where we're always fighting to have the next big payout, the next big IPO, the next big whatever, we can work more thoughtfully on how we change the world. Instead of IPOs and public relations, we can change the world with a different sort of PR, one pull request at a time. At every moment, we have to ask ourselves, I can do this, but should I do this? And when that answer is no, we, not being driven by the urgent race to growth, can do the right thing. When a PM from another team starts pushing on you to give access to phone numbers you got for security purposes, Facebook, so they can target those phone numbers for ads, you can tell them no, and you can tell them why. You can be the person who fights for the user, or the customer. Sometimes that fight means you leave the company, but sometimes that's what you have to do. And shout out to the people who have left their companies recently because they found their companies doing horrible, despicable things. I see you and I support you too. Ultimately, how we're going to change the world is by the legacy we leave behind. Whether we found companies and projects or we work our way up in someone else's ladders, what we build will have some effect on the world. And by build, I don't just mean products, I mean companies too. We are at the beginning of the AI, VR, and machine learning revolutions. We are building not just the products, but the companies that will power tomorrow. And it is extremely important that those companies represent everyone. I said I was not going to talk about diversity, but I guess I was wrong. See, not only is the idea that an industry can be the sole domain of one or two types of people completely ridiculous on its face, having an industry like that is the result of systemic racism and sexism rampant in the environment that the industry was born in, and is a surefire way to continue that systemic racism and sexism. Cyclical. I mean, let's go back to the beginning where we changed the world the wrong way. One example I didn't call out was how we built algorithms and models that reinforced and perpetuated our own biases, stereotypes, and beliefs. The classic example should tell the story enough. If you feed a system data that shows over the past X years, more Black people have been arrested than white people in the United States, that system will learn that Black people are more likely to commit crimes than white people. That system has no idea that the data you just fed it is the result of a history of racism that allows Black people to be arrested more often for crimes of lesser significance. So we're clear, this is not scaremongering. The system exists, and it is in place and in use to help judges determine sentences for those who commit crimes today. And now I can't guarantee that had a Black person been in the room when those algorithms were being created or written or tested, that person would have spoken up, given that it's hard to speak up when you know it's going to come at personal cost. But I can tell you that they probably would have thought about it. And this is why we must build companies that represent everyone and all experiences, so that when we're building the future, we're not making or reinforcing the same mistakes of our racist, sexist, and all kinds of other bigoted past. That is how we really change the world. So that was a lot of doom and gloom. And since things lately have been very doomy and gloomy enough, let me just say this. Our industry has brought many wonderful things as well. My first experience connecting with people online gave me a window into experiences that weren't like mine. I learned what life was like for a young white man who lived an entire continent away in Alabama. Who's here from Alabama? Yay, one person. In the Deep South, who had had a daughter and was struggling how to figure out how to raise a family. For no other reason but the internet would I have had reason or opportunity to connect with him. And we formed a friendship that lasts to this day, over 2 decades later. In fact, I'll probably see him, probably at Christmas when I go to Alabama to visit my partner's family. For him and for everyone else in the chat room that I went to, shout out to Blues Traveler Chat, I was just another person that they talked to. They did not see my skin color. They would not have known my gender had I not told them. They just knew what my very embarrassing, chosen by a 15-year-old handle was. We shared ideas. We formed friendships. We had relationships. And I'm not sure that would happen today. As I alluded to earlier, I've been all over the internet in the last 20 years, and I've watched the internet change and grow. I've watched the internet become less of a place where you can connect with anyone, no matter who they are and where they're from, but instead a place for you to find people to hate and find disagreements with. That pull towards hate, that pull towards being our worst selves online disappoints me, because we have the makings of what could be a beautiful world in our hands if we just use it the right way. For example, though Twitter has become a distributed harassment system, it connected many people who were seeking to find a community in its early days. That was what Twitter was meant to do. Had they thought to build tools in to handle abuse and harassment early on, it could easily be what Blues Traveler Chat was for me over 20 years ago. An excellent way to find community, to connect with people who aren't like each other so that they may learn from one another, with the added bonus of amplifying voices of those who previously hadn't had platforms, but had important messages, like Tarana Burke with the Me Too movement, or the women who founded the Black Lives Matter movement, movements that are, right now, changing the world. We can bring this change. We can change the world for the better. We can build systems that help people find therapists. Shout out to therapy, which is wonderful. I would not be here today without finding and going to... I would not be here today without finding and going to therapy in 2014. And I make sure that I say that in every talk because I want everybody to know that therapy is available to them. Most of us make a lot of money and have good benefits, and we can go to therapy and work our stuff out. It's magic. Okay, back on track. We can build systems that help Flint get clean water. We can build systems that educate, that inform, that connect. We can build systems that help solve inequity in educational systems. We can build systems that alert when people are being unfairly treated for being different. We can build systems where everyone is represented and has the same opportunities for success and growth. We can do all these things and change the world. But first, we must undo the changes we made. So this is my call to action for you, because I know a lot of people really love a call to action in a talk. Here it is. If you work at a company that you know is doing something harmful that you've averted your eyes from, now is your time to speak up and say something and to do something. It is now or never. If you sense that there are pay inequities within your company, maybe start a spreadsheet, you can speak up about it until someone hears you. If you know that your company is misusing user data, you can easily share your story with someone who will blow that whistle for you if you need to protect your employment. I see the folks who can't just quit their job because they have people to support. I value you too. If you know your company is making deals with those who will put people in harm's way, or is building a better way to kill people, or is censoring people, or is selling information to the highest bidder, or is unfairly treating people with power such that they get to skirt the rules, or something like that, now is the time to speak up. Tear down the negative changes we made to make other people rich so that we can build up the world in a way that is more kind, more equitable, and more just. And if you take away one thing from this talk, I want it to be this. Change the world, just make sure you're changing it for the better. Thank you for the time today. Believe survivors. I've been Erica.